Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Srini here. So this is my channel. You can just go ahead and subscribe in YouTube and hit the bell to get notifications for all the upcoming videos. And if you have any queries, you can email me at this email address. So in this particular channel, you'll be getting a lot of free videos on different technologies and tools like automation tools like Selenium. And we'll be having different videos on Java, Python programming languages, and also have created a different playlist on Selenium and Java interview questions. Still, if you have any other topics for which you would want me to take videos, you can just comment me on my video. I'll be happy to take a topic on that. So today I'm very much happy to introduce you all a new playlist and a very much important topic with respect to Selenium or clearing Selenium automation interview. That is with respect to Selenium automation framework. So I've been getting a lot of requests from different subscribers to create some videos on Selenium automation framework and what are the different interview questions which can be asked for the Selenium automation framework. So I do understand the significance of that because I personally have taken a lot of interviews and I know how important this Selenium automation framework topic is. So this particular playlist is going to be dedicated to the prerequisites, what you need to understand and learn before you create a Selenium automation framework. So I'm going to start with all the topics which are required to be known because those are like the essential components of a Selenium automation framework. So we are going to look at the first topic in that playlist today. So the topic is called as properties file. So you might have heard about this properties file term, and even in the interview, some interviewer might have asked you what is a properties file and what role does it play. So we are going to look at all those aspects in this one session, and it will cover the properties file completely. This is going to be the first prerequisite of your automation framework. So these are going to be key takeaways from this particular video. You would be able to understand thoroughly what is a properties file, where exactly it is used, how it is useful in an automation framework, and why. So all of these questions would be answered for sure. Just do watch this video till the end and you'll be able to clarify all your doubts. Still, if you have any doubts at the end of the video, if you are unable to understand any concept, feel free to comment on the video and I'll be happy to reply back. So let's get started. What is a properties file? So properties file is actually a part of a Java. It's a Java concept actually. It's like a simple it's like a simple file, right? So when you create a Java project, you are having an option. So when I show you in Eclipse, right? I'll show it in Eclipse. I'll create a project and I'll just show you it in Eclipse. So I'm just going to create a sample project on page object model because that is the first topic which I'm going to take after this prerequisites are done. So I'm just saying page object model prerequisites, right? I'm just creating a project like this. So here, if you just do a right click on the SRC folder, there are a lot of options you're having, right? So let me first create a package and just say the package as config. It's like a configuration package. I want to have all the configuration as a part of this package. Click on finish and just do a right click again and just do new. So when you do new, there is an option here for file. This is what we are talking about, the properties file. It's a file type. It's a Java property. It's like a file, a simple file. So this is how you're going to create a properties file. Just do right click and click on file and give it a name like config.properties. So you have to use a .properties extension for it to be of type properties file. Just click on finish. So this is how you create a properties file in with respect to Selenium. Whatever we are going to do automation, this properties file is going to play a very critical role. Now, what is the next question, right? What is a properties file? So why exactly we are using properties file? So a properties file is used with respect to, let's talk about first Java, right? So in terms of Java, whatever project configuration data is there, or if you tell you are having any database connectivity in your project, then if you want to store any connection details, like what is the database name, right? What is the username? What is the password? What is the connection string? So all those, like the IP address and the session ID, etc. So all those different configuration part of your database would also be stored in the properties file. So that is how critical a properties file is, right? Now let's talk about from a Selenium perspective. So with respect to Selenium, of course, this database part is going to be there. It is required, right? Because even we do have database connection when we talk about Selenium automation. We do database testing as well. Partial database validation is supported in Selenium. But along with that, why properties file is so important in Selenium is because it will also be used for storing GUI locators. That is, the UI application locators would be stored. So it will be stored in the form of a key and a value. So this is, the left hand side is called as a key and the right hand side is called as a value. So that means if I take any application, for example, let's talk about Selenium Easy demo website application, where this is a perfect application, guys, to practice Selenium, because you're having all the different element types as a part of the different options here, like this form, checkbox, radio button, etc., drop down. So it's a best site for practicing. I've personally practiced on this website when I was starting to learn Selenium long back. So this is the best website. You can go ahead and use it for your testing. So I'm going to take a couple of examples. So first I'll take the XPath of input forms, and then I'll take the XPath of radio buttons demo, and then I'll finally click on this input forms, and then I'll finally click on radio buttons demo. This is a simple example I'm going to take, and I have to store the XPath, right? So what I have to do, I first have to inspect the element. So I'll just to right click and inspect, right? So if you have not knowing about XPath or how to take the XPath, you can watch my videos on my Selenium playlist. I'll drop the link on the video. You can just go ahead and refer to that. So if you see this one, right? So this is the navigation bar. So this list, what you see here, navbar.nav -nav, right? This is what we require to use, because when you do a mouse over on it, it's highlighting these three elements. So I'm going to take the relative XPath. Right? So yeah, I missed out the asterisk sign. This is for the tag name. So I've got the elements highlighted, but I want to go to the input forms only. So if you just look at this particular one, there are a lot of lists. So I'm just going to collapse it. So we are interested on the first list option, because second is date picker and third is table. So let's go for the first list. So we will be using a relative XPath here, and we have found out the list, and now we have found out the hyperlink for the input form. So we are going to store the key here. So I'm going to just comment out, just I wanted to explain this. So I'm going to comment out this part, right? So the key here is going to be your input forms. That is the name of your element locator. So config properties in Selenium context is used for storing GUI locators as well as for database properties as well. Or if you want to store the application URL, or let's say the Chrome driver path, or the, whatever different paths you want to store, like a test data file path, etc. Those also you can store in a config properties file. So I'm storing the locators here. So very important thing, guys, with respect to properties file, I have seen a lot of my colleagues or friends or whoever are new to Selenium, what they often try to do a mistake is that they try to just use it like a normal file. They don't care about the spaces, etc. No. So we have to be very careful with respect to a properties file. You should not have any spaces either front or at the back. There should not be any extra space. So be very careful about that. And you should not give any value like this kind within double quotes or single quotes. No. This is by default considered to be a string. So don't worry about that. When we look at the how to retrieve the data from a properties file, you will be able to see how easy it is to retrieve the data. So just store the data like this without having any space after equal to or after having the locator mentioned on the right hand side, right? So let's go for this next one. Next one is radio buttons demo. So I'm just going to inspect that. So if you look at this one, it is a part of your UL, right? This UL tag is representing the entire section of the drop down. So what I have to do is I have to remove this A, and I have to go to the UL, and of that it is of li3, right? So I'm going to say li of 3, because if you see li tag is within the UL, but the numbering is third tag. So that is why I mentioned li of 1 /UL /li of 3. So still, if this concept isn't clear, you can look at my relative XPath videos on Selenium playlist. So I'm going to store this as radio buttons demo, right? So we have got the 2 XPath noted down, and the left hand side indicates the name of the element. So this is the properties file. So I'm just explaining a simple way of how properties file is used. Let's say we also have the application URL. So I'm going to say application URL equal to, and I'm going to take out this entire one, right? So that's all what we require to do. And now what we are going to do is we are just going to create another package. Let's call it as main package, and let's create a Java class. We'll say test homepage, and I'm going to use test ng. So that is why I'm not having any main method here. We don't want any constructor for now. We're just going to keep it quite simple so that anyone who is new to Selenium automation framework should be able to understand it. So I'm just going to create one variable called WebDriver. Okay, and we don't need to have any kind of application URL here because everything is going to be fetched from config properties file. That's our motto. So let's import WebDriver. Okay, so firstly, when you're creating a project, you need to first add the libraries. Whatever Java, Selenium libraries we require, we need to add that. So I already have got a folder. I just have to copy that folder and add it to my project. So what I do is I just create a library file and I paste it to my project. So that for any particular purpose, right, whenever I want to create a framework or any Selenium practicing part, be it any kind of operation, I can just simply use this library folder. Okay, and just do right click and you have to go to build path option and configure build path and click on add jars. Don't click on add external or any other option, just click on add jars. You can see this current project getting highlighted. Just select from the lib folder and just select manually all the jars. Okay, and that's it. So we just have to click on OK and apply and close. Now all the libraries are referenced into this project. You can see all the required libraries, whatever we need for different operations with respect to Selenium, and the supporting ones are there. So we can go ahead and start using Selenium classes, right? So just do a mouse over. Yeah, and just import the WebDriver. That's all we need to do to get the WebDriver variable. Right now, what we have to do, we have to first launch the browser. That's the first thing which we need to do. So I'm going to have a method called setup. Right? So this part on all we are already aware of the basics of Selenium, right? So we are going to just create the methods to instantiate the session and to close the session. So I'm going to put that under two annotations. One is after method, and the setup one I'm going to put as before method, so that before every test case method, the setup would be called, and after every test case method, after method would be called. So this is the two important things which we need to have. And let's also add the test-ng library, and let's add the annotation for after method. Right. So once this is done, now we are going to actually do our test case writing here, right? So what we are going to do here, public void, and let's say test radio button. This is going to be our method, and let's import this @test annotation. Important to use org.testng.annotations. Don't use org.junit, otherwise we might land up with some syntax error or some other issues. So just go with @test for testng. Right now, let's just instantiate the driver variables how we normally do. First, we have to set the system property. And just have the path. Now, this is what I was talking about, why this particular properties file is so important. So what we will do is we will create another method and we will just say initial config. So this is why this particular properties file plays such an important role. Now, normally what we do, we try to do hard coding. As a part of my previous lectures, I had shown you all, we were trying to hard code the Chrome driver part directly here, right? But we will not do that now. We are going to read this value from our properties file. So what we would also do is we will just store a variable called as Chrome driver path. And this is going to have the path of my driver variable, the Chrome driver.exe. So go to your path wherever your driver is stored. So this is where my driver is stored. So I'm going to go to properties and I'm going to select the entire path. Right. This is how you have to, and you can do escape backslashes because this is the complete file path. So you should have the complete path. So you should have the backslashes as a part of the URL. And that's it. So we have all the properties available now, but we just have to read first the properties file. That's what this session is all about, right? This session is all about knowing how to define a properties file, how to read the data from a properties file, and use it for our automation framework. So the first thing which we need to understand is that config.properties is a file. Just have this understanding clear. This is just a file. So no need to complicate much about, oh, it's a properties file, nothing to worry about. It's just a file. So create the object of a file, right? If you create the object of a file, you can just declare it, or if you want, you can instantiate at the same time. It's up to you. But if you are trying to have this file variable used throughout your project, I preferably would always have it like a global variable, not as a local variable. And later on, you have this file instantiated inside the appropriate method. So just import java.io and use file equal to new file. But here we have to give the path of the file, what particular file path we want to get loaded, right? We want to first reach out to the file and first see if it's getting loaded or not, if it's reachable by the compiler or not. So what we have to do first, we have to give the file path. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use system.getProperty, and this is the way to get the file path of your current working project. So we are in page object model prerequisite folder, right? So we just have to say user.dir. So this will give you the current path of the project. Just use the concatenation operator, and you have to give the file path of your config properties. So it is a part of src, then config properties. So src config.properties. Right? So this is all what we need to have for the file path. So file path is ready. Next thing, if you want to do any operation with the file, like doing input or output, it depends upon what we are trying to do in Java, right? If you're trying to read anything from a file, you need to always first create an input stream to read the data or the contents from a file. So that is why we are using one particular class called file input stream. So I'm going to again make it as a global variable, right? And I'm going to use this FIP variable, and I'm going to say, similar to the new file, we are going to instantiate the object of that new file input stream, right? And just import it, java.io. But again, it requires the file path. If you look at this, it requires, so this is the three constructors available: file description, string, file, right? So we have already created the file. Either you can do new file inside like this, or you can directly pass the file object. So I'm going to pass the file object here, but still it will throw me an exception. The reason is because this is going to be like a compile time kind of a check by the Java compiler. It will try to think, okay, what if the file is not found at the path given by the user? What if the path is incorrect? So it will always force the user to handle the exception at the compile time. So this is a case of a check or a compile time exception. So again, if you are not clear with the Java concepts, you can look at my Java playlist. I've created videos on exception handling completely. So I'm going to do surrounding it with try catch as a way of doing exception handling. Okay, and I'll just give us this out here. I'll say file not found exception caught. We should be giving a meaningful error always, so that whenever we are doing debugging later on, when we run the project, if we get any exception, it will be taken care of because we know exactly which method has thrown the exception. So I'm going to mention the method name, right? This is the method where we have got the exception, and you can also just print the exception message, e.getMessage, right? So that's all we have to do with respect to handling the exception. Now what else? We have now got the file input stream. So from this file input stream, we can start reading data. Fine. But is this a normal kind of a file? No, it's a properties file, right? So to read the data from a properties file, we still have one more concept to be understood, that is a properties class. So we have to create a reference variable of a properties class and import this properties java.util. And now we are going to just instantiate properties file. Okay, so this is the simple things which we have to follow when we want to do any reading from a properties file. Now what is the next step? This properties file variable, reference variable, has to read the data from the input stream, because already that input stream is having the file content. So I'm going to load that file input stream by using the method called load. So you can also use a reader class variable, right, reader, or you can use the file input stream. These are the two options we are having. So I'm going to go with the input stream, and I already have FIP here. So this is how we are going to load the data from a properties file. If you do a mouse over, it is suggesting that this may lead to a input output exception. So it's asking us to handle it. So I'm again going to just add this option, catch clause to the surrounding try. So this is how you're going to have the IO exception also added. But do not interchange the sequence of these two, because this is a parent exception of file not found exception. So if you do interchanging, you will be getting error, compilation error, because already IO exception would have caught your file not found exception, and you will not be having this code reachable. See, unreachable catch block. So ensure that the sequence is not changed, right? Next thing is that we just now have to get the property. Fine. So we will not get the property, or we will not read the properties right now. What we will do is we are going to create one more method, and that particular method will basically read the property from a properties file. So this is a simple way of how you want to read the data from a properties file. So you just have to return a string value and just say return prop. Because I've made properties as a global variable, I can directly use prop now. Dot, there is a method called get property. So just use this method, but we have to pass the key here. So this key is going to be like a parameter. We are not going to do any hard coding. So we are going to get that key, and we are just going to return that, right? So this is how we are going to have this get property returns a string. So ultimately the return type is a string. So this is how we are going to return the property. So let's look at this, what we have done. We have created a method initial config for reading the data from a properties file. It will just load the properties file. As you can see here, it will load the input stream, but we are having a separate method. Whenever we need to read any property, we are just going to call this read property utility method. So these two methods are basically the utility methods. So we can have these utility methods as a part of our base class in the framework. So don't worry, the next topic, as I told you all in this prerequisite automation framework lectures, right, is going to be on base class. So it's going to be all essentials what we need to know before we create any automation framework. So I'll explain how these two methods can be a part of the base class, right? Now what we have to do, we can directly access this particular property. So I'm just going to call this method read property. So again, as I've told you, prop.getProperty will just get the property read, means this particular property or this one or this one. We just have to pass which property we want to read, and it will be able to get the value using this prop.getProperty method. So what we will do now, we are going to just call this particular method read property, and we are going to pass in bracket what particular property we want to read. So we want to read the Chrome driver path. So this particular thing we can hardcode, because this will not change. This name will always be the same. Only sometimes we might change the path of where we are going to store the Chrome driver.exe or the other locators, for example. But the names of the locators we are not going to change. So we will keep it as it is here, right? And this also, if you don't want to hard code, there is another important way, that is we can create a constants file. So that I will cover in my upcoming lecture, how to create a constants file and how to store the data in that. So for now, just give the entire name of what exact property we want to read. But before doing this, right, before even we read the property, first of all, we have to call this particular method initial config, because this method is going to load our file input stream. So we are going to have a method call here for initial config. And after the file input stream is loaded, using the prop.getProperty in this read property, we will be able to get the property value. And that's all we need to do. So the property is read for the Chrome driver path. Now let's do the other parts, right? Now we are going to do driver equal to new Chrome driver. Okay. And we are going to do all the other things which is like normal part. So implicit wait, let's give some time let's say 10 seconds maximum it will wait, and let's give some implicit wait timeout for our page load as well. For loading the page, let's give it maximum of 20 seconds. This will not be the case, but just we're giving sufficient time. And we have to import the Chrome driver class. So now our before method part is set up, right? But what about launching the application? Fine, that also we can have it if you would want as a part of your before method. But now comes the application part. Again, this application is read from the properties file. So this is how properties file plays such a key role, because you don't have to do any hard coding. It's all a part of your configuration data in your properties, configured properties file. And the application URL is this one. Okay, we're going to launch the browser and we're going to launch the application. Now we want to perform some tests. So for that as well, we already have got the locators mentioned here. So we just have to read them. So what we would do is we are just going to use, first we will say application title. First, let's verify that we have, on the right page. So let's just say driver.getTitle, and later on we are going to access the elements. So let's say driver.findElementBy, and let's assume for now, for this example, that the one which we are going to store in config properties is in XPath mode. So we can directly use by.xpath, right? But instead of passing that exact value, I'm going to read the property from a properties file. So again, I'm going to have this particular method. Read property, right? And what is going to be the first one we're going to access? Input forms. So just pass input forms, and then we just have to do click operation, right? So we'll do click. We'll copy this and we are going to just put it for the next element, that is radio buttons demo. So we have used now totally all the 4 properties, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever we have in config properties file, right? And after this, again, let's try to get the title. So this is going to be like a simple test we are trying to do, just to check that this particular test case is working fine with properties file. And finally, we will be quitting the window. Okay, so let's run this particular project and see how this works out. So let's run this project. So it's just trying to launch the browser. Yeah, so browser is getting launched. It has got the Chrome driver path. It has launched the application, and it has clicked on input forms and the radio button space. So it happened very fast. I know you guys wouldn't be able to capture what exactly happened, but let's look at the console window. Application title was initially Selenium Easy Best Demo website, right? The first line. Then it read the input forms. It clicked on it. It clicked on radio buttons demo, and we are now on the radio buttons demo for automation. So what we will do is, let's just try to comment out driver.quit so that it doesn't close the window. And now let's rerun the program again. So you can see what exactly happens, and it will show you the second page. Yeah, so this is the page which it got redirected to, the radio buttons demo website. So this is a very simple example of how to use a properties file, and with this it's so beneficial that in an automation framework we can just use the utility methods to just load it one time, and then later on just access it through read property method. We don't have to every time load the properties file. This will save memory and time. So rather than doing that, we can just call the other utility method to just retrieve the property once the file input stream has been loaded by the properties file. So that's all for this session. I hope you liked this video and this was knowledgeable for you all. In the next video, we're going to cover all different important concepts, like we'll be having object repository separate session. We'll have a base class separate session, how to create a base class. We'll have a separate sessions on how to create a page object model design pattern in Selenium, and how to create a page factory design pattern in Selenium. So stay tuned for more videos, and do subscribe to my channel if you haven't done yet, and do share with your friends and colleagues. Thank you so much.